the whole meeting. That's good.
So just start the recording.
All right. All right. Well, it's Wednesday, May 31st, 6:05 p.m. This is a special meeting of the Laurel Ethics Commission. Could we please have a roll call for the people who are here?
Okay. Chair Hester,
Present.
Vice Chair Bardwell,
Present.
Commissioner Drake,
Present.
Commissioner Skaggs,
I'm here.
alternate Crook.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, everyone is here.
Excellent. And I'll also notice that we have commission staff. We have City Administrator Pulley, our legal counsel Dennis Whitley, and our admin assistant Laura Christopoulos, who are all here as well. The first thing is there was a general agenda that was sent around. I hope everybody got a copy of it. It's fairly straightforward. We have basically one item on the agenda having to deal with the financial disclosure statements. So could I get an approval of the agenda? If someone would like to make a motion to approve the agenda, and then we'll modify it as we go along.
A motion to approve it.
A second.
Yes. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All right, so we're going forward with that agenda. One thing I want to do is to put the approval of the minutes of the meeting of February 6th before the briefing from the city administrator. That's our normal order of doing
Okay.
things. So were the minutes sent out or? were
Yes.
Okay. Did everybody get a copy of them?
Yes.
Okay, would anybody like to make any requests for any additions or deletions or edits? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
And is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye to adopt the minutes.
Hi.
Aye.
Hi.
Minutes are adopted. Now on to the main point of this the special meeting. If we could start with a briefing from the city administrator, Administrator Pulley, having to do with the overall status of financial disclosure statements. There was a list of everyone who has a financial disclosure statement that is still out, and then also there are some comments by the subcommittee members who did the review of the ones that have come in. And it's a 2-page document that everybody should have. Also, there was if I might ask the city administrator to please give a brief summary of the events surrounding the taking of one of the financial disclosure statements from the files from last year. And subsequently, I understand it has now been returned. So if you might also just include that in your overall briefing.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Christian Police City Administrator. Just a very quick briefing at the request of Mr. Hester. So approximately on May 1st, Councilman Mitchell stopped by the city administrator's office and asked Laura to receive his 2021 financial disclosure form to review it. We thought he was going to review it in-house, but he ended up taking it outside of the office as well as outside City Hall. And then approximately a week later, on the 8th, he still hadn't returned it. Laura had reached out to him and he told Laura that he had lost it or couldn't find it. And then I sent him a memo. Well, before I sent him a memo regarding this matter, we sent Mr. Chairman Hester a memo stating pretty much what had took place. And then the next day on May 11th, I sent Mr. Mitchell, Councilman Mitchell, a memorandum saying that, this document needed to be returned ASAP, and didn't get a response from him. So I talked to Mr. Hester about it, as well as Mr. Whitley, and then our city solicitor and Laura. We had an internal meeting. Our city solicitor then drafted a memorandum to Mr. Mitchell that went out on May 19th, telling him that he had to the close of business to return it on May 22nd, or we were going to send this matter over to the state's Ethics Commission. Mr. Mitchell did return the document, the original document, I might add, to our city solicitor on May 22nd at our council meeting. I received the document. It is back in our possession, but currently at this time, Mr. Mitchell still hasn't turned in his financial disclosure for FY22.
Thank you. And so we have this list before us, including Mr. Mitchell's name is on this, but it's sadly about a page and a half, closer to 2 pages worth of names of people who have either not submitted their financial disclosure statements on time and are currently racking up fines at $2 a day. There are some people who filed late, but they eventually did file. And so there was a pin put in the amount that they're going to owe the city in terms of fines at $2 a day, and they're different amounts. One of them, for example, is $18. One of them is $30, depending on the number of days late that they were, but the ones who did submit them. But sadly, we still have quite a few where people have simply not submitted them at all, and so the fines are continuing to accrue in these cases. And also on this list, there were a couple of ones that our subcommittee had a couple of thoughts about. So before we go into the ones who are either late or just haven't submitted yet, perhaps if we might have our subcommittee chair, Vice Chair Bardwell, give us a brief review of the review that she and Commissioner Drake, I understand, was her other person working with her to review the ones that had been submitted. If you could please give us a quick summary on where those stand. Are they now all corrections have been made, and are they now complete and adequate, or are there ones that are still outstanding in terms of not being sufficient or adequate in terms of our requirements for a financial disclosure statement?
Well, thank you, Chair Hester. Good evening, everyone. According to my knowledge, and I do thank Commissioner Drake for assisting throughout this process. She has memory that is like Fort Knox, so she was very helpful in recalling some of the instances that may have been, repeat incidents from prior years, or things that have been addressed in prior years and just be repeated. The information that you see before you is current. If Laura, I don't think there's been any changes since you crafted this document, correct?
The only, excuse me, the only thing I have changed is to update the fines that are still accruing, so
Okay,
that
well,
the amount is current as of today.
okay, and thank you so much for putting this document together with the data. Is very helpful. It does paint a different picture when you see everything summarized together, because when you're having the hands-on, and Commissioner Drake, when we were doing this individually, it wasn't as apparent until it was captured in this document. So this matrix does show the number of outstandings, and as Laura stated, the only difference is keeping current with the pending fines. We do have let me scroll down. I have 2 computers in front of me trying to get this mouse straight. Okay, so if the thing where Emergency Services Commission, we wanted to bring it to the Commission's attention to see whether or not e-signatures are acceptable. I know in my line of work, they are acceptable. there was a signature on the document, but it was in, e-format. So due to the pandemic, we use DocuSign at my employer, and I know some other, I don't know what the city of Laurel uses, but e-signatures have become more acceptable and prevalent since the pandemic hit. Even prior to that, they started, there was discussion about e-signature. So that's something that we need to discuss to see if they will be acceptable in this instance for Patrick Davis.
Well, I think we had discussed e-signatures several months back when we were looking at sending out the requirements and requests for people to complete and submit a financial disclosure statement. And my recollection, I could be corrected because my mind is a steel trap, but maybe not a titanium trap. In my mind, as I recall, we said we wanted live signatures, not copies or electronic ones. Does somebody have a different recollection for this time around? I think, we're certainly, I'm wide open to discussing this, but I'm kind of, I guess, not thinking that it's a great idea to use something retroactive rather than prospective. And so if we wanted to do this for next year, then I think that would be a fine thing, but to kind of go back and change the rules, especially since, when we sent out these documents, there was nothing on the documents that said you can use an e-signature. It basically said you need to use, an ink signature on the documents before submitting them.
Yeah,
Am I misremembering?
the form does still say that we need a live signature, that e-signatures and electronic copies of the forms are not allowed.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
well, thank you, because my memory did not recall that unless it was a meeting I missed. But anyhow, if we
worries.
specify that wet signatures are required, I still think prospectively we do need to consider e-signatures, and if it's being, that's just acceptable practice these days. But I know when even at my employer, we use e-signatures, but that's something we can consider, as you said, going forward. So that was the item with the issue with Patrick Davis. I see that. Laura, is it you that emailed to ask for the wet signature?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And I'll give him a call tomorrow and see if I can get a hold of him that way.
Okay, well, thank you for reaching out, and we'll see what happens with that matter. For the Board of Trustee, Michael Robert Letts, there was question one, explain how being on the Board of Trustee has a direct financial impact. I believe, Tony, you made that notation. Is that something you wanted to discuss?
We're gonna unmute me. Okay,
Oh.
hopefully this will work.
Yeah, you sound much better.
All right. Yeah, he had answered the question about having a direct impact, and he put that he was on the Board of Trustees. So my question was, well, how does that impact? What's the direct financial impact? So does he get some type of retirement or something? And so by him being on the Board of Trustees, it impacts his retirement?
Good evening, City Administrator here. I don't think it impacts him. I think he was just explaining that he was on the board. He was disclosing that he was on the Board of Trustees. I mean, it's not a direct financial impact for him.
It's an impact that accrues to every city employee rather than just to him, right? If he does his job well, then everybody in the city winds up benefiting rather than just himself. And I think we all, I'll take that back. I personally don't have a problem if it's for the benefit of everybody. If it was just for him, I would certainly have a serious problem. But I believe, again, this was a misty memory from either last year or the year before. We discussed this particular kind of an issue where being on the board of trustees, I think we decided that it was not a direct conflict of interest. But again, I'm wide open to anybody's memory being better than mine on that discussion, or if anybody has a problem with something that is for the good of everyone rather than just himself. If anything, having a little bit of skin in the game is kind of nice, I think. You know?
And I don't believe he is he's not a former city employee or a city employee.
Okay,
He's a board member. He was a councilman. But
right.
do council members get pensions?
I don't know. I don't think so, but
I don't
I
think
mean,
so.
No, they don't.
Okay, I mean, that's good. As a citizen, I wouldn't want them to, because it's not a full-time job. It's something that citizens do for the benefit of their community.
Mhm.
It's not something that's a job. It's not a career, or shouldn't be. It's like, us, we're not doing this as our career. This is not our job. We're doing this for the good of the community. Let's just go down this list, just kind of, one by one on this most recent list that was just sent out, this matrix. And we've
Okay,
already touched on a couple of them, but
Yeah,
with everybody, if I could just sort of, start at the top, mention a name, and then we'll sort of handle them one by one, and hopefully we can work our way through them relatively quickly, because I think most of them are relatively straightforward as to what we need to do in terms of an action or a resolution.
well, I was just going over the ones that had questions that were not
Sure.
fines.
Yeah.
Did you want to go over the fines as well?
Well,
think
I'd like
those
to-
are pretty.
I'd just like to go over each one by one, name by name, and for most of them, I think it's like maybe a 10 or 15 second sort of a process. But a couple of them, I think there might be something where I might want to make a comment, or one of you want to make a comment and see whether or not there's something that goes beyond this. For example, on the
Okay,
first
well,
one, go ahead.
So are you going to be presenting, or do you want me to continue?
I'm sorry, I didn't know that you weren't finished. Please go ahead.
No,
And finish.
I wasn't finished. I was hitting the ones that did not have fines, except for I did skip Carrie Fuller, but that is something that I can go back to. Carrie
Right.
Fuller did not submit. She had a major stroke.
Right.
So wouldn't there be?
Well, that was one of the things I wanted to kind of touch on, just by going
Okay.
by name. But I think
Yeah,
let's do that rather than when we start going through name by name. But I think there's at least one or two other ones here. One of them is
right.
Timothy Miller, and I think there's another one, Brensis Smith.
Yeah, so I was going, as I stated previous, I was going over the ones that did not have the fines in red.
Right.
But
Right.
if we want to go back to Carrie Fuller, that is something that we need to discuss from a fine perspective.
Yeah,
I
well,
think-
I'd like you to finish going through the ones that you were doing. We'll leave
Okay.
Carrie Fuller to the group with fines, or not. We'll see. But
Okay,
if you could
so
just finish going through the ones that you had pulled up, for example, as I say, Timothy Miller and
Well,
Francis Smith.
Okay, well, after Carrie Fuller, the next one I have was Patrick Davis, and we discussed that about the e-signature.
Right.
And then the next one was the Board of Trustee with Robert Lutz. And
Right.
now we're on the Shirley Bell, which states that she's also on Crime Solvers. Is it a possible conflict?
Right. Well, can anybody explain how Crime Solvers and the Youth Services Committee are at all involved with each other? You say here that there's the Youth Services Commission approves grants, and some of those may or may not be going to the Crime Solvers. If that's the case, then I think there's an issue here. But how much
So,
of a case that is?
no, there are no youth service grants going to the crime solvers, and moving forward, crime solvers is gonna be a committee that no longer exists with the city. So
Okay.
I don't think there's an issue there.
And last
Okay.
year, this covered the time period of last calendar year. Was there anything that, any overlap whatsoever between the two last year?
No, like I said, youth service commission grants, don't go to crime solvers. It's
Okay.
totally two different entities.
All right,
Okay, so that's not a conflict then.
right.
Thank
Can
you
you
for
unmute me?
clear. Sure. Oh, not me. I don't have control. Laura. I think you're still on your phone, Tony. I don't think your phone was
Yeah.
muted, just your computer. So we can hear you.
Oh, okay. The Youth Services Commission, I wanted to know who is the chair? Because only one person on that entire commission submitted something. So I think that's something that we need to talk to whoever the chair of that commission is.
Are you sure that's the one? I see several people listed on the Youth Services Commission. Oh, but no, because of the fine, there's more people, it's just that one submitted it. See the other fines that are
Oh.
listed?
Well, there are four that
Yeah,
are
but
accruing
that's
fines,
what
so
I'm
they did not
saying.
submit. And then the fifth is Shirley Bell.
Right, so
Correct.
so
So
there's
that
more than
makes me
one.
think that there are,
We need
No,
we
I'm
need to maybe
saying only
invite them to
one
come and talk to
person.
us.
only one person on that commission submitted, and that's
Right.
Ms. Bell. So I was wondering who is the chair, because the chair needs to get on the other members of that commission to say, hey, what's going on? That would be like the ethics commission, and only one of us submitted.
So I will have to double check who the chair of that committee is. However, I will state that staff has been reminded numerous times to inform their people to make sure they get their FDSs in. People just aren't listening, but I will definitely look into the chair of the youth service committee and make sure they tell their people, and actually everyone that's on the list. So.
Right. Well,
Okay.
as we have done in the past, we're not there yet, but I think when we write our memo to the mayor, asking the mayor to issue these fines, the a note also needs to go to the chair of each of these groups, or the president of the chair or the president, whoever it is in charge of that organizational unit within the city, and say, these people need to recuse themselves from any action whatsoever as of the beginning of their violation, and to make sure that any actions that have been taken since then need to be reviewed and ended, because I mean you're having people who are not in compliance with the ethics ordinance, making decisions for the city, which is in my mind, a very serious issue. We'll get to that at the end when we talk about the fines and how do we go forward with getting the fines moving forward.
Okay, thank you. The next person is Marlene Collins.
Right.
And she needs to do the form over, because we do specify that not in A is not acceptable. You need to spell it out or
Okay.
put none.
Do you think that it's not appropriate for a fine then, since she did submit it, as just she used the wrong?
Correct.
term?
Correct. I don't think it's appropriate for a fine.
Right. That doesn't sound fine worthy to me, but it definitely sounds like we need to be on her to get it done right.
Okay. Can you mute whoever that is? Okay, the next item is Timothy Miller. Past employee, does business with the city, still owns some stock. And the next column identifies that he will choose which of the on-call firms is to be assigned to city projects. The director wants work distributed equally between the 3 firms. So this is what we, in my line of work, call a task order. So it looks like there's some, he has some decision-making, or at least appears on the surface there's some decision-making responsibility involved. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but
Actually, he said that, so Timothy Miller is recused from making the choice of which on-call firm is going to be used. Christy Fang, the city engineer, and Brian Lee, the DPW director, will be making those decisions. So Mr. Miller will not have anything to do with that decision. And that's how he's kind of taking himself out of the conflict there.
Well, that sounds like a good first step, but I think there's a second step that would be something to discuss, and that means he should not be involved in the management of any of these contracts. Because, I mean, that's, that gets in, I think, a very sticky situation where you own stock in a company and you're managing that company for the city. Does anybody have any thoughts about whether it should go beyond just recusing from the selection and also, not being involved in any aspect of any management of any of those companies, or that one particular company that he owns stock in?
but does the controlling interest make a difference, or just owning stock, period? Because somebody could be own 1%. That doesn't mean they can control decisions.
What we've done in the past is say, if it's like a stock in a mutual fund that has that's basically unidentifiable, and is one of a very large basket of funds and of companies who are involved in that, I think that's one thing. But where you actually own stock in a company, and that company is now working directly for the city as a company, rather than it's just part of a very large basket, in a mutual fund situation. I have a feeling that's not right.
I would think that then when they recuse him, he should be recused from anything that has to do with KCI. There are 2 other firms, it seems, that the city deals with. He can do anything with the other 2 firms, manage or whatever. But the thing is, it may not necessarily be looked at as a direct conflict because we don't know how much. It may be just a small number of stocks, but there is the appearance.
Right.
Yes.
It's definitely the appearance. And this says here the director wants the work distributed equally between
Right.
the 3 firms. And I don't think the director is going to be able to have his way if he wants this person to be working for him and do it ethically. I think the director is going to have to understand that this person is only going to be able to work on the contracts with the 2 firms with which he does not own any stock.
I think what the Director Lee was referring to is that he wants the contracts to be distributed equally, not the work among the 2 assistant directors. So like once a contract is done for a road work project, say if it goes to KCI, Christy Fang probably is the project manager on there and vice versa for another one. He's not saying that he wants both Christy and Tim to evenly distribute the work among the contracts. He meant the vendors.
Okay, well then,
It's probably worded wrong.
If that's the case, I think there can be a workaround on this, but I think it's going to have to be in writing, and it's going to have to be signed by the various managers involved in this. So it's very clear and in writing that he is not in any way involved with selecting or even just day-to-day managing KCI. Is that something that people would agree with?
Sounds reasonable to me.
I don't see a
don't know.
problem with that.
Administrator Pulley, is that
I
something you
don't
think
see
the
a
city would be
problem
able
with that.
I'm sorry, you do
No,
have a
I'm
problem?
saying, no, I don't. I agree
Okay.
with you.
Okay,
Technically on the surface, I don't see a problem with it, but in the event that Director Lee is out and KCI is working on a big project and Tim is the next person in line to make decisions on stuff, then he's gonna have to make that call.
no, he's not going to be able to make that call. He's going to have to give it to one of the other the people there. You say there's at least one other person in the office.
Hypothetically, but sometimes there is a case where he might be the only one there. I mean, the city does have a lot of projects for managing, but.
Well, I think we also want to protect Mr. Miller, because I mean, if he gets involved with that, that could be a serious issue. And that would reflect very badly on him and that's not what he wants. I'm sure that's not what anybody wants.
If it makes a difference, I believe he said he only had 3 shares, and it was kind of an employee stock type thing where employees own shares in the company, but he did say he only owned 3 shares.
Well, if that's all it is, then would he have a problem in selling those shares and completely divesting himself of any interest in KCI?
I could ask him.
And then the next thing is, I mean, that would be one step. And then a second step would be to have a cooling off period. Because you say that, I understand here that he had been working for KCI. How long ago was that? Was that
So,
a few months
I think-
ago, or is that a few years ago?
I believe it's a few years ago. I think probably maybe the best way to do this is when you write your recommendation to the mayor, include that within it, and then we can get all the answers and then move forward that way. Because I do know Mr. Miller has been retired from KCI about, I'm gonna say probably 2 to 3 years, and then he started working again and he came here, so.
Right. Well, because I know we have something, again, my memory isn't perfect, but I believe we had something in the ordinance or in the general procedures about cooling off periods after you're finished working for the city before you go to work for a private company. But do we have something going the other way? Do we have a revolving door where somebody is working for a company with a contract with the city and they come work for the city within a certain amount of time? That's going to have a very I don't know, it's not going to look good, to say the least, that somebody from a company is now working for the city, giving grants and managing contracts or whatever, giving contracts and managing contracts for that company where they just walked out of. That sounds a little cozy, if you know what I mean.
Mr. Whitley, did we have something like that in the new ethics? It seems like I remember
I
that
believe
there was something about them.
I believe there's a 2-year period for city officials going to work for private companies. I don't believe that there's anything the other way around, but I'll take a look.
Yeah.
This particular circumstance, if he's been gone 2 to 3 years, if I'm going to assume that we would not put any more burden on folks coming into the city than with city officials. He would be outside of the window.
If it's been well, I prefer to use the same standard either direction if we can.
Yeah,
So if the standard is 2 years going from the city to the private sector, to have somebody from the private sector come to the city, I think 2 years would be an adequate cooling off period where it's not looking like that person is, somehow in a very cozy situation with the city and the taxpayers' money. Okay. Any more discussion on this?
Okay,
Vice
The,
Chair Bartle, next.
excuse me.
Next.
Yeah, Mr. Brensis DeShawn Smith.
Right.
There was Schedule A, didn't identify him as an owner or tenant. As in addition, Schedule H, the business address was not complete. But I see a notation that business address is in SE. What's SE, Laura?
Yeah, Southeast DC.
South.
Southeast.
Oh, we need more information there.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I mean, we need a city address, and a city address needs to be his primary address. All right.
Yeah, he has an address on the front of the form that he put in what his address was, but in Schedule A, which asks if he has any interest in real property, either as an owner or tenant, he put no.
He didn't specify.
Well, maybe we can
Yeah.
ask him to clean this up a little bit and provide additional information so that we're confident that he is a city resident and, you know, any additional properties or businesses or such in other jurisdictions like DC is fine, but he needs to have it clear that his primary residence is Laurel.
Yeah,
That was the question. Go ahead, Laura.
the Washington DC, that's his business address. That was Schedule H. So his business address is in Washington DC, but he didn't put in which quadrant it was in. And the same thing happened last year, and it was his business address is in Southeast Washington DC.
Okay, well, I'm good with that. How about everybody else?
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay. Maybe if we could
For
just
the
ask him to
business
add a
address-
little more text.
Yeah, so the business address, oh, go ahead, Tony, because Tony, you go ahead and finish the discussion because the issue was whether he was the owner or tenant at his current place of residence, correct?
Yeah, the thing is, he says he lives in a place in Laurel. All right, it's fine. But then it says, are you an owner or a tenant? And he did the same thing last year. He didn't check either one. And
Right.
what brought it to mind for me this time around, to be honest, is all of the stuff that's going on with some of our Supreme Court justices. If we don't know if his landlord is doing business with the city, we don't know if it's a landlord or it's the mortgage company. We don't have any way of knowing. Now, some of the information that I received was that he was not necessarily the owner of that particular unit, that he's living with someone else and they're the owner. But my feeling is still, if you are living there, whether your name is on the lease or the mortgage or not, we need to know that there's no possible conflict going on. I mean, just for example, if he's living with his girlfriend and his girlfriend's mortgage company is doing business with the city, that's still a possible conflict because that's where he's living.
Right, that's his primary residence.
Right.
Yes.
So yes, this needs to be clarified.
But he could also, again, in the example that Commissioner Drake gave, if he is living there, he's not the owner and he's not technically a tenant. So maybe that's why, maybe we need to change the form. But, you know, land owner has a specific definition, tenant has a specific definition.
Well, it'd be
So
great
how
if
would
you
that
could-
be classified?
Again, if his name's not on the lease, technically he's not a tenant. If he walked out tomorrow, he has no legal obligation to the landlord. Actually, he has no legal obligation to the landlord, period, if his name's not on the lease. If the mortgage is not paid, the mortgage company doesn't come after him. If the rent's not paid, landlord doesn't come after him. So I guess we can figure out exactly how we would want to word it. But he's not an owner and he's not a tenant.
But he
Okay,
needs to
do you,
specify,
Yeah, he
sorry,
could say with my girlfriend, but again, if we're going to ask specific questions, you know, we need to make sure that there's something that catches folks who aren't owners, who aren't tenants.
Now, could
Agree.
you maybe come up with some suggested language that would be able to cover that? And what I'm thinking is, you know, something that it just really nails somebody's feet to the floor, something along the lines of maybe, you know, where do you file your federal income taxes from or your state income taxes from? What address do you put on that?
Mhm.
And so it's not just, hey, I'm, you know, couch surfing or I'm, you know,
I vaguely remember us
hanging
having
out
this
with my girlfriend, but you know, where do you at? Where is your legal principal residence?
I vaguely recall us having this conversation, and we talked about driver's licenses and the like. So again, if you want to do, that's fine. But I remember asking or recommending driver's licenses.
And I believe, I'll double check, but I believe we do have a copy of his driver's license from last year.
Mm-hmm. And I think it showed that same address
Yes,
The Laurel address? or
on the
Southeast?
driver's license.
yes.
All right, well, I think to resolve this, we need to ask him to provide some additional text in this document. And then the second step would be to ask Mr. Whitley to please draft up a little more, tight language that doesn't allow for weaseling. Sort of. And just
We only have
really
this-
sort of, makes it very clear, this is your principal legal residence. What is your principal legal residence?
Mhm.
What's the
Yeah, that
address?
sounds like good language. Principal legal residence.
That you use on your driver's license and your income tax returns. Kind of just really don't leave any escape.
No, thank you, Mr. Whitley, for mentioning that. We did have a lengthy discussion about driver's licenses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the last
One more.
person.
One more.
Oh, sorry.
Also on page 2, where they go down and check, yes or no when the schedules, and where he has schedule H, he should have checked the yes box. And I don't know if he checked no or if he left it blank. But
Is that
needed
related to,
be.
that's separate from the business address piece? His schedule.
And because we had talked about this, the way the form is set up, there's a page in the front and it goes down all the schedules and the person checks yes,
Yes.
no, yes, no, yes, no. So
Right.
he did not put anything for H. I
On the
don't
summary-
believe. And it
On the summary sheet you're referring to? The summary
Yes,
sheet?
yes.
Okay.
And so that with H is, he should have yes. And I can't remember if he did no or he just didn't put anything. So that's simple enough, but it needs to be fixed.
All right. Well, could we ask staff to communicate with him and convey the substance of this discussion in terms of what he needs to do to fully and properly complete his financial disclosure statement?
Yes, I'll be in contact with the clerk to the city council tomorrow.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Tony, for mentioning that too. And the last one is DeWalt. I think the retirement piece, I think what's more important here is that Schedule A, there were 2 questions that were unanswered for number 7 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
And we're here again.
It's incomplete.
All right. Well, here again, we can ask staff to please get in touch with him, let him know that he needs to complete this.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, with all the ones that we've discussed here so far, staff is going to go back to all these individuals and say, here's what you need to do to make your financial disclosure statement complete. I'm not initially feeling we need to start looking at fines for these people because they did submit substantial and financial disclosure statements. It's just that they're not quite as complete as we need them to be. Is there a general agreement with this, or does somebody have any thoughts about any one or all of them?
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I for one want to go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Councilman Mitchell, he didn't submit, but based on what he did before, it's going to be the same question as Councilman Smith as far as where does he live? I remember he also did not put he was an owner or a tenant. So
We'll
If
jump
there's
off
that
that
issue,
bridge
I
when we
could-
get to it, when he actually submits the financial disclosure statement, but we can't tell him in advance that he did something wrong in terms of the way he filled it out. What we're going to tell him along with these others is he did something wrong because he did not even fill it out. So,
oh, I understand, but I guess I was just bringing up that
sure.
the same problem that we had with Councilman Smith as far as being a tenant or
Exactly.
an owner based on past experience. It's going to come, it's the same issue.
He's one of our repeat people who are not doing things right from the start. So I just want to take just half a second here to give my deepest thanks to Vice Chair Bardwell and Commissioner Drake for going over these and coming up with this analysis. It's just really, really helpful for you to do the subcommittee like that. So thank you. And it's really, really helpful.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I think there was one, are you going to revisit?
Yeah, I'm going
Ms.
back
Fuller?
to the top of the list now.
Okay, great.
Starting with Fuller. Okay, so Fuller had a major stroke, and I think that's a pretty good excuse for not submitting one, but how far has she recovered? Is Carrie a female or male?
A female, and the head of the chair of the Arts Council said that she was not able to, at this point, she's still not able to fill it out. She's being taken care of at this point and still in very bad shape.
Right. Well, my initial thought is to wish her the very best in recovery and not to start fining because she has, I think, a very legitimate, sadly, excuse for not having submitted one so far. But that when the day comes that she is recovered enough, then she will need to fill one out and submit it. This is not a permanent. You don't have to do it. It's just simply, while she is having this medical emergency, that I would just as soon suggest that we not fine her. Does anybody else have any thoughts about that?
Agreed.
Okay, well then let's go ahead and I think communicate. I don't know if we can communicate with her directly, but maybe at least to the chair of the Arts Council that this is where we stand on her submitting one, that we wish her the best in recovery, and that should the day come that she is sufficiently recovered to start participating in the Arts Council once again, then we would expect the financial disclosure statement to be submitted before she starts participating in any Arts Council activities and decisions. Okay. Tony Small, Anjali Wells, Alante Cross. The first two, Tony Small and Anjali Wells, still have not submitted. I see here that Alante Cross has submitted, and so that clock is paused at $30 for the 15 days before she had submitted it.
Get over there.
Okay, where in the other two, again, at the end of this, I'm going to talk about this memo we had sent last year to the mayor. I recommend we're going to do the same thing again. We're talking about having these people not only recuse themselves of anything going forward, but retroactive to the date that they stopped being in compliance with the ethics ordinance. Let's see. Dhruva. Do we now have one from Dhruva? Bharati Dhruva? So we now have a financial disclosure statement from them?
Yes, they submitted it first in February, but they used NA. And then they I had emailed them about
Right, okay.
replacing the form with something saying either not applicable or none. And the
Okay.
replacement form was submitted on May 5th.
Okay, that's good. Inka Patel owes $18 for 9 days late, but has requested a waiver of fines. Was there a justification for a waiver? Was there a
Oh, yeah,
reason?
that's the individual that submitted the letter, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
I don't, do you recall what the justification? Was it because it was a
she
10 days
said,
past the deadline?
she said she had just started a new job that was taking up all of her time, and that in past years, she's always gotten it in on time, and this, she just had too much going on this year and let it slip.
Well, my thought is it's $18, which isn't a large fine, and unless there was a very specific reason, like, for example, Carrie Fuller has more than adequate reason, or if there's a death in the family, or if it was, something that, but rather I'm busy is, I don't know that that's necessarily a sufficient justification for an excuse from the fines.
Well,
What does anybody else think?
my take on it was that when she was saying that there was, the way I read the letter, it was just like a lot going on at one time. And so she submitted it. It was late, but she's done it before as far as submitting all of her stuff, and she submitted it on time. So since it's only $18, to me, I think we are trying to keep people. So, I say we could give her a pass this time, just because she has been on time in the past. It's not like she's a habitual late submitter.
Any other thoughts? One way or the other? My mind's wide open. I'm willing to go either way.
I'm okay with a pass.
All right.
And when Tony and I reviewed the form, based on her history, I don't see it as an issue. This was I view it as a one-time occurrence.
Okay. Well, then I'm fine with having this be a one-time occurrence, but to have that communicated to her in writing, say, this is a one-time occurrence. Should it occur at any time in the future, that we would not be as lenient. Does that sound reasonable?
It does.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, then we have Carlos Lancaster, who's not submitted, Jamal Lee, who has not submitted. They're up to $62 as of today and counting. Emergency services, we have Fred Carmen, Wayne Johnchik, who have not submitted, and they're up to 62. Christiana Bonheur is, I guess she was 9 days late also, but perhaps without a good excuse. So her fine is $18. Board of Trustees, Kenneth Scrivseth and Adam Cheek are up to 62. Historic District Commission, Robert Cluckoon is 62. Youth Services Commission, James Agby has not submitted. And I noticed that he's a repeat offender from last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very much not in the mood to give him, a pass. So definitely. Rhonda Whitley and Craig Frederick and Gloria Arnold are all have not submitted. Two of them are repeat offenders, Rhonda Whitley and Craig Frederick. Rhonda Whitley was 32 days late last year, and Craig Frederick was 19 days late last year. Let's see. I guess the last one here is Martin Mitchell, who is $62 and counting. And he has been a person who has had difficulties in the past in submitting an adequate financial disclosure statement. So last year, what we had was a memo like this. This is last year's memo. It's dated July 8th, 2022, and it just lists each individual. This was a memo from us to Mayor or from Administrator Pulley to Mayor Mo that outlines everybody who has not yet submitted or who has submitted late and has not received an excuse and is due to pay a penalty, a fine, and to ask the mayor to issue those fines, because I believe the understanding is it is the mayor's authority to issue fines rather than our commission's authority to actually issue the fines. I know there's been discussion to give that authority to the commission, but as far as I know, it hasn't happened yet. So we would be asking the mayor to issue a similar memorandum. It doesn't have to be word for word, but something close. That basically says, here are the people who have either submitted late or have not submitted at all at this point. Here are the current fines, and those fines would be listed as $2 a day. And for those who have not submitted their financial disclosure statements, those fines would be increasing daily. And we would also, in that same memo, ask the mayor to copy the chairs and the president, the chairs of the commission, the president of the council, and any office directors or similar managers in the city who are the bosses of people who are not submitted, and ask them to recuse themselves from any actions, any decision making, any discussions, to try and influence any discussions, and not only to do it from this point onward, but to do it retroactively, and to look to see if there have been any actions taken by these individuals as of 31 days ago, as of today, or whatever the date is that this goes forward, and to have their actions reviewed and hopefully nullified, whatever actions they may have taken while they were out of compliance with the ethics ordinance. So that's what we did last year, and I wanted to see if anybody wanted to talk about this, if we want to go forward with the same type of memo. As I say, it doesn't have to be word for word, but something very close to it, and listing all of the people that we've discussed today.
I agree with that approach. I had a question regarding the mayor's authority to put forth the fines. Does the mayor's authority also rest with the waiver of fines? Because we were saying that it's okay to have Patel, for example, not pay the fee, but does that ultimately rest with the mayor to make those decisions as well?
My sense is it probably would, and we would say in that memo, here are two cases where, we have used our discretion and humanity to basically excuse these two individuals from the fines, because they are very special cases, and it's not something that we take lightly in terms of excusing these fines, but that again, we don't want to be unnecessarily and unreasonably harsh in cases where there's a good justification, in our opinion.
And I believe the fines are discretionary. I don't believe they're mandatory. So I believe it's a may and not shall.
Well, I think it'd be good to at least notify the mayor.
Yes.
so the mayor's aware, that we have taken this action for these two people and the reason why.
That was actually toward the vice chair's question that yeah.
Yeah, I like lots of transparency.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion to the effect of what I just mentioned here in terms of actually everything we've been discussing in terms of asking staff to go forward to these particular individuals who need to make modifications and corrections to what they've already submitted, plus put together a memo like we did last year from the city administrator to the mayor with copies, of course, to everyone who is not only late or is going to be getting a fine if the mayor approves, but also the heads of whatever commissions and boards and whoever their bosses are, so that everyone's understanding as to what this is. So is there a motion to do that? All of that rolled into one motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. So does that take care of the business in terms of the financial disclosure statements?
Yes.
Great. There's one more thing here. Is there a general public hearing? Is there any member of the public who's on this this meeting, this Zoom? Hearing none, seeing none. We'll move on to the. Is there any other business anyone wishes to raise at this time? Any business any of the commissioners wish to raise?
I don't have any business to raise, but I wanted to congratulate Administrator Pulley on being accepted into, I believe it's, which is it? Can you read?
It's the Harvard
Harvard.
Kennedy School Executive Program for State and Local Government.
Yes, that's awesome. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate
Congratulations.
it. Looking forward to it.
You're going to
I
love
do-
Cambridge.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be kind of chilly, but I'm still excited nonetheless. I did just have one thing I just wanted to mention to the group. Just a note that our updated ordinance that was approved by the state will be going to our city council in June. So work session will be next Wednesday.
Would it be needed or appropriate for any of us to be there at that discussion or?
Absolutely. So Mr. Whitley, I believe, will be presented to council as we discussed, and the meeting. Sorry, the kid was outside my window. So Mr. Whitley will be presented to council. Both the work session and the meeting in June will be virtual. We only have one meeting in June, one council meeting in June. So it'll be approved the first meeting in July.
Okay.
Hopefully approved.
Well, if you could please provide an invitation to all of the commissioners to, for whatever appropriate meetings where it might be helpful for one or more of us to be there in the audience. We would not be up at the dais. We would be in the audience if anybody wanted to ask us questions.
Well, sure. It'll be a virtual meeting. And I will confirm with the clerk once the meeting is set live. I'll make sure she gets all the information out to everyone.
Sure. Just get us invitations, and for all the commissioners, you're all welcome and invited and encouraged to participate in these discussions, because I'm sure there's probably going to be at least one or two questions, and it'll be helpful for us to show our flag and be there to be able to answer any questions from our perspective. All right. Is there a motion? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
One quick question. Should we set a date to kind of follow up with some of these questions? Because I just don't want it to, like, okay, staff is going to look into it and they don't get a response, and it just kind of fades into the distance.
Well, I like to do things earlier rather than later, but give people at least a little bit of time. So we're talking about June. I don't want to wait until August or July or August. So I'd like to do something in June in terms of doing any follow-ups. I think it's going to take a couple of days for staff to put together the memo and for the mayor to get something out. So, I mean, what do you think about 15 days or 21 days or whatever from today? Do you think that's adequate time for having a follow-up Zoom meeting where we could have a report from staff on all the good news that everybody has now submitted their financial disclosure statements and paid their fines, or you know, to deal with anyone who may still be recalcitrant?
I
Commissioner
can,
Drake, Commissioner Drake, do you have a thought as to how much time you want to give people?
Me?
Yeah,
Oh, no, I was gonna, I think Ms. Pulley was getting ready to answer, because they know their schedule, so.
sure, sure. No, but it was just, you brought it up. I just want to give you the chance to throw a number out there.
Oh, no, I want to hear from them. What do
Okay.
they think is reasonable?
Good, okay. Administrator Pulley, what do you think is reasonable?
sure, I will touch base with Laura and then Deputy City Administrator Barr about setting the meeting up for the 3rd week of June, as I will be out of the office for training. So to see if something, follow up with the questions and the answers for everyone.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah,
Yes.
All right, and
Yes.
have a blast in Cambridge. It's just, you're gonna be working your fingers to the bone because, it's not, those are not easy programs. So just go in expecting 24/7 kind of work. And
I'm going home to do some reading now.
yep, when you're there, you're gonna be having a couple hundred pages a night just in reading, I'm sure.
And group 7:30 in the morning, study group 7:30 in the morning.
Yep, absolutely. Harvard's
You
like that.
got, you
I've been
got
there.
this.
I've
Yep,
been
I'm
to
ready.
Harvard. I know what it's
Thank
like.
you. Have a good
Okay.
evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Oh, you guys have to do adjournment, sorry.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Same to you.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We're
Aye.
adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Bye. Thank
Thank
you
you,
again.
everybody. Have a good night.
Enjoy the nice
Too.
weather.
Thank you. Good night.